Good evening. It's wonderful to see such a large crowd on our opening evening. My name is Perry Bolton. I'm chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Council, and on behalf of the board and our executive director, Dr. Frank Bird, I'd like to welcome you to the 1984-85 programs of the Baltimore Council. Dr. Bird has done his usual superior job, and we have such speakers lined up as the ambassadors from Syria, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan, and Greece, the Secretary of Navy Lehman, the Sun Papers panel, and Dr. Steve Muller of Hopkins, among others. So I assure you that we will have a very exciting next 6 months. First, I would like to thank the First National Bank of Maryland for sponsoring the reception this evening. Before introducing the ambassador, Mr. Bernard Berkowitz, the head of BEDCO, is with us this evening representing Mayor Schaefer, and will make a presentation to Ambassador Zhang.
Ambassador Chung, ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Schaefer deeply regrets that he could not be here personally to greet you. I am here as his representative, and it's my pleasure on behalf of the mayor and the citizens of Baltimore to welcome you to our city. We are deeply honored by your presence here this evening. We have some presents here from the citizens of Baltimore to you. One is an honorary citizenship in Baltimore City, and then we have a book about Baltimore which we think you will enjoy. And it's my honor and pleasure to present these to you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Cheese.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
We are highly honored this evening to start our 1984-85 program with His Excellency Ambassador Zhang, Ambassador of the People's Republic of China to the United States. Ambassador Zhang was born in Beijing in 1914 and has served his country in many top posts since 1949, including Ambassador to Pakistan in 1965 and 66, member of the Chinese delegation to the Sino-Soviet border talks 1969 and 70, ambassador to Canada 1973 to 76, chairman of the Chinese delegation to the 37th United Nations General Assembly in 1982, and vice minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs 1978 to 1983. Our relationship with the People's Republic of China is, of course, one of fundamental importance to the United States. We look forward to many years of cooperation, and it is with great pleasure and the warmest greetings that we welcome Ambassador Zhang to the Baltimore Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Berkowitz, and thank you for the honor and the kindness you show on behalf of Mayor Schaefer, and please convey my best regards to him, and I certainly would like to come back and to meet him in person. Well, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank the Baltimore Council on Foreign Affairs for kindly inviting me to this happy gathering. It is a pleasure and honor to me to be with you, distinguished members of various circles in Baltimore. I admire your contribution to international understanding through participation in the meaningful activities of the Council. And I just heard how active and what a rich program you have. And Baltimore is also so close to Washington, so I feel really in my heart very close to your beautiful city, and would like to come back from time to time. And I also would like to see more of my countrymen to visit your beautiful country. Today I propose to talk a little bit about China and its economic relations with the rest of the world in general and Sino-US economic cooperation and trade in particular. I do hope that all of us will benefit from an active exchange of views and ideas. Perhaps a few basic facts about China need to be mentioned here. China, a country slightly larger than the United States, has only about half as much of the cultivated land as the United States has. Yet it has to support a population 4 times that of the latter. China, though a land of 5,000 years of splendid civilization, the extent of which it suffered in modern times from wars and foreign aggression and exploitation, was something unheard of in North America. How to eliminate abject poverty and speed up economic development. This was a big challenge to the People's Republic when it was founded in 1949 after the downfall of the previous corrupt regime. We have now succeeded in feeding our 1 billion people. Life expectancy has been raised to 67.8 on an average. A fairly comprehensive industrial base has been built, and the country has even joined the advanced ranks in certain individual areas of science and technology. Of course, China has had its own share of economic miscalculation and political turmoil, such as the so-called Cultural Revolution. And China is still a poor developing country with an average per capita income of less than $300. So you can see it's not very much. With unity and stability achieved on the political scene in recent years, the Chinese government has launched a gigantic effort to reform the economy, the essence of which is to highly develop China's economy. And to do that, we have to do away with some of the working systems, what we call like the big cauldron meal. That means to say everybody gets some fare to eat, but no matter how hard he works or how little he works. And also what we call the iron rice power. That is, everyone gets his job, but whether he works good or bad, but he will not be fired, and so he can live on that. And this does not really bring impetus, which was needed in the early years when China was first liberated. But in the years to come, then it has become a hindrance to stimulate the people really to work, and which is also against the basic principle of the social system, that is to each to have to reward according to his work or his contribution. And therefore we are now going to change that which does not do well to the economy as well as to the principle of our system, actually. And we'll link the performance with material rewards. Our goal now is to build up a modernized socialist society with Chinese characteristics. I mean, modernized, I think, is easy to understand. It means that China used to be an agricultural country, but now we also have to be highly industrialized and to be, in all aspects, should highly developed. And the socialist is in the sense that we are that the people will be that we will have the socialist system, but the way it is dealing with China's characteristics as the basic system we have established after 1949. And our production risen, and we have a very gigantic target to achieve. Specifically, one that the total value of industrial and agricultural production is to be quadrupled between 1980 and the year 2000, which is quite a ambitious scheme. While adhering to the basic principles of public ownership of the means of production and to rely mainly on a planned economy, China has installed a host of reforms in both the urban and the rural areas. In the rural area, a new production responsibility system has been worked out. Nowadays, within the general framework of the state plan, we set up a new working system is that each farming family with its allotted land may decide to may enter into contract for what crops or produce he will plant, and also he has to fix a certain quota of production. After delivering a certain portion of their yield to the state in the form of agricultural tax or whatever other product, and he may retain another portion for collective use, and they are free to sell their surplus farm produce at the free market. Thereby, tremendous vigor has been injected into the rural economy, the structure of which has changed a great deal. Now, in the countryside, the farmers not only just do farm work, they also do a lot of grazing, in raising the animal husbandry, and also in fishery, and working on forestry, and even they work on some art and craft, and also building their own light industries, and which are being used in the agricultural field. And therefore, the industry, trade, transportation, and the various service trades have also flourished there. With such a diversified economy, not only in the city but also in the countryside, it is possible to bring into full use China's abundant labor and the rich resources. The emergence of a large group of specialized households and also special working teams, such for house building or for public works, and in the countryside, that marks a new development in the rural economy in the division of labor, and is expected to lead to an overall increase of commodities. In the industrial sector, a management responsibility system at all levels has come into being. Within the overall framework of the state plan, enterprises and local authorities now have more decision-making power on production and management, so as to be responsive to the market needs and to boost up the production both in quality and quantity. Under the new system, instead of delivering all their profits to the state, which was the old practice, with nothing left for their own expansion of production, the new practice is that they are now begin to become tax-paying entities. They will have to pay tax and not just to hand over all the profits. And they can, now after paying the tax entities, they retain the profits and applying them to investment or bonuses for all the employees as they see fit. This gives the enterprise and the employee incentive to improve their managerial skills. And the employees also have much to say to the management, and they have working committees so that they have representation in the executive works of the enterprise. Meanwhile, the existing commodity circulation system is also being transformed. We try to break down barriers between different regions, reduce intermediate links, establish direct links between the producer and the seller, and form a crisscross circulation network extend to all parts of the country. Besides, the government also encourages the setting up of cooperatives as well as an appropriate development of individual economy as a useful supplement to the public sector. In short, China's economy remains a planned one, but assisted by market regulation. The initial results of the reform have been most encouraging. Our industrial and agricultural output value increased rapidly in recent years, chalking up an increase of 10% and 9% respectively in 1983, 10.5% for industry and 9.5% for agriculture. And the people's living standard registered a marked improvement. In trying to make China strong, we know full well that our own efforts come first, but we are also aware of the importance of international economic cooperation, which makes both sides better off. For an extended period in the past, economic blockade by some foreign countries and certain internal factors, such as the misinterpretation of self-reliance as autarky, and other factors, sharply restrained our ability to move in that direction. But things are entirely different now in China and in its international environment. We have been vigorous pursuing the policy of opening to the outside world, and the door will never be closed. But excuse me if I dwell a little long on the internal situation, because I think this gives you some background knowledge about how it is possible now that we can open up and really promote trade and economic relations and other relations with the outside world. Based on this reform and achievement at home, in the past 5 years, China's annual volume of foreign trade also has much increased. It has doubled from 20 to 40 billion US dollars. It means it has doubled. And in the recent years, in the past 5 years, 188 joint ventures with a total investment of 800 million US dollars have been set up. This certainly is not a large figure, but you have to realize this is only the starting. It's just the beginning of an experiment. It has proved to be very effective. And before that, there have been none of this kind of joint ventures. So it's just quite remarkable, the achievement we have attained. Now, to strengthen China's economic and technological cooperation with other countries, she has been developing since 1979 economic legislations dealing with foreign trade and investment. We have been failing to have this kind of legislation. Now they are being worked on. To date, 40 laws and decrees have been enacted, covering joint ventures, income tax, the joint exploitation of offshore petroleum resources, and foreign exchange control, and a patent law will soon be enforced. I know, according to the standard of the American lawyers, this is far too few. But for us, it's already quite a great amount of work, and we will continue to do so and to make it more perfect. Now, coming to the economic cooperation between China and the United States, I must say it has developed rapidly since the two countries established diplomatic relations in 1979. Our two-way trade was worth only a little more than $1 billion in 1978, but had subsequently risen to over $4 billion in 1983, which accounted for 11% of China's total imports and exports. While the absolute figure is not very impressive, but if you take the percentage of the growth rate is quite remarkable. And the United States has become one of our largest trading partners, lagging only behind Japan. By 1983, Chinese and American enterprises had entered into nearly 100 contracts for economic and technological cooperation projects. The scope of cooperation extends from tourist services and light industrial production to more significant industrial and technological items such as coal mining, hydroelectric power generation, and the exploitation and utilization of offshore petroleum and non-ferrous metal reserves, and also in many other fields such as railway systems, or in motor cars, or even in starting to work on aircrafts and many other subjects. The U.S. now has more investment in China than any other country. To take a single item of offshore petroleum exploration, U.S. investment accounts for 53% of all foreign investment made to date. However, it should only be realistic to mention that in spite of such rapid developments, a number of problems remain to be solved. Though the United States says that it regards China as a friendly, non-allied country, it is still holding on to some outdated legislation which discriminate against China and adversely affect our economic and trade relations. Although the U.S. has started to pursue a somewhat more relaxed policy on technology transfer to China, which we do much appreciate, yet a lot depends on the actual implementation of this policy. China has been running up a large trade deficit with the U.S., totaling more than $10 billion. Yet the U.S. government is placing tighter and tighter restrictions on some of China's export items to America. In particular, the restriction on Chinese textile exports and the increasing number of so-called anti-dumping cases can only have adverse effect on our trade relations, because the Chinese textile export comprise the largest item, comprising about 30 to 40% of our exports to the U.S., and which is provides the foreign currency we need to buy from the United States. Of course, it would certainly be irrational to insist on an absolute balance of trade. We do not insist on that. Yet expansion in import must be based on increase in exports. This is just common sense. And to achieve a trade balance by cutting imports is not a wise solution. A better solution could and should be worked out by both sides. And we hope that some protectionist tendency that is coming up in states will not be come to the fore. Now, during his visit to the United States in January this year, the Chinese Premier Zhao Ziyang stated that Sino-U.S. trade has been developing at a remarkable pace, yet the scale of economic cooperation is still comparatively small. This, he said, is out of keeping with the population resources and total productive forces of the two countries. Premier Zhao's statements truly reflect the existing state of Sino-U.S. economic and trade cooperation, and at the same time present a great potential for development. Our economic and technological cooperation and trade activities have the basis on the principles of equality and mutual benefit. On the one hand, there is the U.S., with its advanced industry and technology looking out for foreign resources as well as overseas markets. On the other hand, there is China, with vast territory, abundant resources, plentiful labor supply, and huge market potential, actively acquiring foreign capital and advanced technology and equipment for its modernization program. They are fertile ground for developing trade and economic and technological cooperation by giving full play to each country's advantages and making up for the other's deficiencies. Besides, the bilateral framework for such cooperation has been built up through a number of agreements and treaties covering trade, industrial and scientific technological cooperation, tax, civil air transport, and so on. The Chinese government has made it clear that the open door policy is a long-term and fundamental state policy, because we see it has done great merit to our economy, and I think it's also today in international practice. We have so much to for exchange and cooperate in order to make our economy flourishing. I think all foreign enterprises, including American enterprises, are thus provided with reliable policy guarantee for their cooperation with China. As China concentrates on developing its economic infrastructure, such as energy and transportation, and transforming its hundreds of thousands of enterprises, which the machinery is some of them are quite not up to date. So we want to remodeling them and bring up new ones. The opportunities for American participation lie in so many places, such as the potential oil fields in the East and South China Seas, the coal mines in central China, and the Yangtze Gorges, where we plan to build one of the largest hydroelectric power plants in the world. You see, Three Gorges in the Yangtze has tremendous hydro potential. Needless to say, strengthening economic and trade relations between our two countries will in turn bring improvement in our political relations. And it is equally true to say that the elimination of obstacles in the political relations will undoubtedly enhance our bilateral economic exchanges and trade. At present, I still like to say a few words about the Taiwan issue, because this still remains a major obstacle in our relations. It's a fact that Taiwan has always been part of China's territory. It was ceded to Japan for about 48 years when China was defeated by Japan in 1895 and was forced to cede Taiwan. But that has been Taiwan has been turned back after the Japanese surrender at the end of the Second World War. And Taiwan has been reunited with China. But then, of course, the former Chinese corrupt regime fled to Taiwan. Thus, the reunification is still a task to be fulfilled. And the Chinese people are now striving for the peaceful reunification of the country. And although it is already 5 years since Sino-U.S. diplomatic relations were established, some Americans still regard Taiwan as an independent political entity, trying to create two Chinas, or one China, one Taiwan. However, I'm sure that the American people who shed blood and sweat for their own national unity will fully understand the deep sentiments of my people for national reunification. And this reunification is a common aspiration for all the Chinese people on both sides, both on the mainland as well as on the Taiwan island. In this regard, I wish to stress that the principles of mutual respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity and non-interfering in each other's internal affairs must be observed by both our governments, and I sincerely hope that the U.S. government will adhere to these principles as have been set forth in the Sino-U.S. joint communiques, so that our relations will gradually move onto the path of steady and sustained development. It is all too clear that good relations between our two great nations are not only beneficial to our two peoples, but also to world peace and stability. Ladies and gentlemen, Baltimore and state of Maryland have made important contributions to the development of Sino-U.S. relations and friendship. The sister relationship between your state and China's Anhui province is progressing, as an Anhui economic delegation will visit with you soon. Just not a few days ago, the Chinese traditional orchestra has been performed here and been warmly received by you, as well as the Chinese children's choir from Shanghai. And we are most gratified and grateful for your enthusiastic support and the warm reception you have given to them. And I think our cultural ties will continue to flourish. A few days ago, ground was broken in China for a Center of Sino-U.S. Cultural Studies, a joint project between Johns Hopkins and China's Nanjing University. If I understand it correct, I think on September the 1st they have laid the stone for that project. I think let us pick up shovel and break more ground in various fields, so that an edifice of Sino-U.S. friendship and cooperation will stand tall and upright. Well, thank you.
We thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, and of course we're deeply interested in that fascinating question of the future of China's economic relations with the United States, and the overview that you've presented is appreciated very much. The Ambassador has agreed to answer questions from now until 10 minutes after 7.
Would you help me, because there's so many hand raising and I don't know. Yeah.
I'll recognize.
Good. Well, you will just find out who is.
I'll recognize the questioners and I'll repeat the questions for the benefit of the Ambassador. Yes, sir.
Mr. Ambassador, as you know, in 1997, Hong Kong reverts to China. Capitalist Hong Kong is very skeptical how they will mesh with socialist or communist China. So much so that the largest financial and industrial conglomerate in Hong Kong has now moved out of Hong Kong and established headquarters in Bermuda. What is your answer to that?
To repeat the question for the benefit of everyone, one of the major firms in Hong Kong has departed, looking ahead to 1997 and the transference of power from the British to the Chinese. And the question...
Yes, Mike.
That doesn't happen very often. The question was, there indeed has been a movement of at least one of the major companies from Hong Kong to Bermuda, as perhaps a result of the transference of power, the future transfer of power in 1997 from the British to the Chinese. The question is, what is the Ambassador's reaction to that possibility and its inference for other such moves?
Well, it's true. Hong Kong will be is part of China and it will be returned to China by the year of 1997. And Hong Kong, when it comes back to China, will still remain to retain a capitalist system. So I think no one for the capitalist system need to be alarmed because that system will be retained. As how that will work with China, I think we can work out some formula. Since we are now working with the outside world, with other countries, we also allow other countries to have joint ventures to run in the capitalist way, the foreign firms, if they like to, within China, so they can certainly also run well in Hong Kong. I think in history, many countries had their own system, maybe capitalist system, and they have also run other countries or states like colonies or feudalist system, and well, anyway, they have been. The people may not like it, but they have been run well, and they have been working together. And I think now the Hong Kong, they are also Chinese people, and we will give them a high degree of self-autonomy, and so that can be worked out. We noticed that some big company has moved away, and we feel sorry about it, but I think later they will feel sorry.
The definitive answer to your question. Yes, ma'am.
When I was in Hong Kong, I missed Sir Geoffrey Howe's press conference. But the day after his press conference, the stock markets in London and Hong Kong went up. So I assumed that all the Chinese in Hong Kong were satisfied with whatever their freedom was. But when I left Hong Kong, the people themselves were apprehensive. Will the Chinese in Hong Kong be permitted to enjoy life as they have been enjoying? I find the two cultures very different because when I had gone to the mainland China too, and I could see, just recently, I just came back,
Yeah.
and I could see, well, I haven't been brought up here, I could see that I could never adjust back home again. And having lived in Hong Kong, I mean the people in Hong Kong, and now that they have experienced progress and initiative and individuality, I imagine that is what they're fearing.
Oh, yeah.
The heart of that question, perhaps, is do the Chinese in Hong Kong fear the loss of the kind of existence in a capitalistic, individualistic society which might occur after 1997?
Yeah, I think you make it easier for me to understand. Yeah, I think it's we will keep that. We say we are negotiating with Britain, and we made it quite clear that we will let them retain the same kind of capitalist system, the same kind of living lifestyle as it used to be. So I think they can be quite accustomed. They don't need to adapt to the life in the mainland, and of course there's some difference. Just as some people may not be quite be adept to coming from the United States to adapt to China. Some Chinese coming here also is finding it hard to adapt to the living here. But anyway, I think that will be coming. Will be coming to some change. I think even in China itself, the life with the coming up of the living standard, and with the open up policy, our living in China is also making quite remarkable changes. For example, now television is so popular, even in far remote countries, countryside. People watch the TV, and the TV tells them a lot, which they don't know before. And that will also affect their life and their thinking, for example.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ambassador, some foreign policy specialists in the United States say that the forging of strong ties between the United States and the People's Republic, especially economically, is to our ultimate disadvantage, because by playing the Chinese card, as it is termed, we're losing its advantage with respect to the Soviet Union. Would you react to that? And would you also give us some kind of overview about the current state of relations between the People's Republic and the Soviet Union?
I may have a little trouble with the first question. The question is the United States, by helping China economically and cooperating with it, in some way lessening its influence with China, and by lessening with
The Soviet Union.
with the Soviet Union by strengthening China? And is that true? And then secondly, would you comment on relations between China and the Soviet Union?
Yeah. Well, in the first place, I think China is now opening up. We are working by our efforts, and I think every country, perhaps even the Soviet Union, is interested to do some investment in China, although we are not interested to have their investment right now. But the Western European countries or Japan and also United States all do show some interest. I think this economic cooperation will be beneficial at least to both sides. As far as our two countries are concerned, it will benefit China as well as the United States, because then you can, otherwise you won't come. It's very simple. And I don't think we never tell you that they should have less trade relations with the Soviet Union. It's for you to decide. If the Soviet Union does not want to have your trade, it's not our fault. It's not because you have made business with us. Because even before we had relation, your relation with the Soviet Union was not that good. Yeah. Well, as to Sino-U.S. relations, it's we are against hegemonism, against the expansion policy of the Soviet Union. That stand we will never waver or retreat from that stand. But also we would like to have normal diplomatic relations with the Soviet Union. That means rather also have our present relation is at least cool. It's not a normal one, although we have embassies, but we don't have much contact, particularly not many common languages. But we still try. We have the dialogue, and we hope that we can also better our relation. But we put it as if the Soviet East, as they sometimes say, that they want to have a Russian moment of China, then they should at least show it by action, mainly by withdrawing their occupation from Afghanistan, their support for the Vietnamese expansion in Cambodia, and their massing of troops on the Sino-Soviet border, and also their stationing troops in Mongolia. We think those three are the testing stones where the Soviet Union would like to relatively improve our relations. So far, the Soviet has shown no sign of making any move, and therefore, although we may have some exchange of visits or some dialogue or some increase of the trade, but in substance, our relation will. I see no sign of improvement in substance. I don't expect any improvement in the foreseeable future.
Ambassador Zhang. I have a question with regard to Korea and the relations between North and South Korea. Stability and security in Asia has greatly been enhanced by the improved relations between the United States and the People's Republic of China, with Japan and the People's Republic of China, and there's even been some improvement in relations between South Korea and the People's Republic of China. I'm wondering, what role is the People's Republic of China presently playing and willing to play in trying to improve relations between North Korea and South Korea toward normalization, because that's one of the more tender spots in East Asia now.
The question is, what role is the People's Republic of China willing to play as an intermediary or an encourager of improved relations between North and South Korea?
Well, as you all know, China has friendly, good relations with North Korea and no diplomatic relations with South Korea. That is because of the historical circumstance, background. I would not go elaborate on that, but that's how it stands. But anyhow, I think and in that we have some different, we are in a different position as the United States. But we do have shared the same view that it's to our interest and also to the interest of the Koreans that the peace on the peninsula should be maintained, that the war will not become up, and that the North and South Korea should by some way to work out to closer relation. And North Korea has been advocated for a reunification by peaceful means and by themselves, and to form a federation, called the Gaoli Federation of the, and we support that position because we are also for a unification but by peaceful means. But how that can be done, of course, is a matter for the Koreans themselves to solve. It's their domestic affairs, and we do our best to try to maintain peace and to maintain the balance there, and we do nothing to make the thing difficult. But we are not in a position to go beyond, to interfere into the, or to look into to look as to any override in the domestic affairs, and therefore we just let the Koreans to work out by themselves.
Mr. Stern?
Follow-up question, Mr. Ambassador. The People's Republic of China plans to attend the Olympics in Seoul 4 years from now. And do you think the Olympics being held in Seoul will help or hinder the general atmosphere in East Asia?
The question is, does the People's Republic of China plan to attend the 1988 Olympics when held in Seoul? And secondly, will the Olympics being held there help or hinder the general tenor of political affairs in East Asia?
As I understand, the next Olympic will be held in Seoul. It's already been made a decision. And it's not, I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment now whether that, I know there had been some comments, even by the American quarters, whether it's a good decision or not, whether they will cause some problems. But in my part, I don't think it's proper for me to make any comment on that. And China, I have not heard any announcement that China will not participate. So I have no further. I cannot say further than that now because I have not no further information. But our stand is we will actively take part in the international organizational activity which we are a member.
Well, we've all been entertained by the Chinese athletes, and we'd be extraordinarily disappointed if they weren't there in 1988. Mr. Shapiro.
Mr. Ambassador, you made mention of the problem in textiles. Have you heard anything from our government as to an alleviation of this problem? And if it is not alleviated, will the Chinese take any steps to retaliate?
Well, we hope the American government will change that. Will withdraw its change of the custom regulation, which really is hampering the trade and do damage to the not just China, but also Hong Kong and many other textile exporting countries. We do hope so, and I still hope the best, but I cannot predict what it will be, and it's too premature for me to say anything about how China will react.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Ambassador, Deng Xiaoping speaks of socialism with Chinese characteristics. Now, from what you explained, this all pretty much sounds like capitalism. How do you explain that in terms of socialist tradition or the traditional Chinese socialist tradition?
The reform movement which you've described sounds somewhat like capitalism or private enterprise or an incentive system to many Americans. Is there a contradiction between that and socialism?
Well, I think perhaps they need to read some literature or some books relative to get this point so clear, because when you hear something market economy or about some stimulation, the immediate thing is capitalism, which actually I think the socialism has the same thing. The main difference in the socialism is we have the public ownership and run by the public, and also planned economy. I think those are different. But you can, of course, say United States, you also have some planning. Well, to me, it sounds like socialist.
Mr. Kruger.
During the Cultural Revolution, we had knowledge of the decline of the universities in China. I wondered if you comment, what's the status of freedom of inquiry and academic freedom in China today?
The preface to the question was that because of the Cultural Revolution, some people feel that there was a decline in China's universities. What is the status of academic freedom today?
Yeah, it is true. The Cultural Revolution did great damage to China's academic and universities because they were all closed and the people were all sent down to the countryside. There's nothing for them to study or to search. But now they are being reopened. Now the Cultural Revolution is over, and we have come to the conclusion that the Cultural Revolution is a complete mistake. It's something that only has done bad effects, and we have now reopened and also enlarged the academic life and the universities. And the professors or the faculty members, they are being now given the best facility we can afford to give them to work on that. And not only we are still short of them, we also would like to invite foreign professors or teaching staff to come to China to help with to build our education. So that's my answer. It's hard to say how much freedom. After all, what is freedom? This is it's very hard to. I think I would say it's a great amount of freedom.
Professor Lanoux?
Mr. Ambassador, you've been describing changes in the Chinese economy. What changes do you predict in Chinese politics?
You've described changes in China's economy. What changes do you predict in her politics?
Well, we have some changes. We stopped the Cultural Revolution, and we started a new line which is in coherence with the our original general line of building up a socialist modern society, and this policy now is being enforced with more efficient measures and more efficient and more creative measures. And so I would say the basic policy, there won't be any change. And this policy has been accepted by the people. And the general reaction in China is, among the peasant as well as the common people, is for, well, in Western way you would say for God's sake. For China they would say that, well, for sake of the heaven, well, don't change. Just go on this policy.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ambassador, when we study Chinese history on an elementary basis, we learn that there is a conflict in the concept of legalist rule or rule by law and the concept of rule by morality or perhaps ideology. And as outsiders who have a difficult time fathoming Chinese affairs, would you comment to us as to whether, in your opinion, in China today, the rule of law is supreme, that the party must obey the rule of law, or that in some way the party is above the law?
Would you comment on the question of whether the rule of law or party ideology primarily governs in China?
Yeah, that's what I don't want to talk too much on the history, because the history there are many different interpretations, but I just want to say that China, well, in our history, of course, the law did not in the past play such an important role as in the Western world, perhaps, and today, and we do see the importance of law, and we are working on that. And we made it clear that whatever law we have made and we passed, that should rule for everybody. Although, of course, I think even in some country like yours, not everybody is so faithful by the law. Also, you have very strict laws. I know that once in a while in the paper, some political figure or even some high official, but still do not observe the law so strictly. And we also, of course, we maybe have even to a greater extent, because our laws are imperfect and it's still new. People have not been educated really to know those laws and to follow them. But we are doing our best to do that. We think it's acknowledged that the law should be observed by everybody, whatever his position or no matter whether he's a member or non-member of the party.
Mrs. Niles?
You have, your country, Mr. Ambassador, has made a very bold step on population control. How fast do you think that is going to be able to be effective, especially in rural areas?
Mm-hmm. The question is that the People's Republic has made taken bold steps with respect to population control. How effective does the ambassador think that will be, especially in rural areas?
I would say that in general it has been quite effective, because now our growth rate has been sharply cut down. I think that's been cut down from about 2% growth rate to now about 1.3%. Of course, it's more efficient in the cities than in the countryside. But some kind of do work are coming to working quite well. But we know it brings with it many difficulties, and we have to do a lot of work to do that. It's very important for China and also for the world, since China constitutes 1/4 of the population of the whole world. If China just goes on like that, I think everybody will feel the pressure.
Mr. Waldron?
Your country has given military assistance to the freedom fighters in Afghanistan. I was wondering, does your country plan to give them the anti-aircraft equipment that they need for their success? That this equipment that our country so far has refused to give them.
The question is whether the People's Republic of China will give anti-aircraft support equipment to the rebels in Afghanistan to supplement other support already given.
Well, I do know that we fully support the resistance of the fighters against the invasion of Afghanistan. But as to what kind of weapon and how much we give, I can say, I'm not in a position to talk on the details, and I'm not, myself, I'm not so well informed about it. I hope you will excuse me for that.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ambassador, the Reagan administration has talked about free trade, and yet, as we heard before, textiles are going to impose quotas in the next several months. They also talk about technology transfer, and yet the Export Administration Act, which is enforced, is still quite strict and restrictive when it comes to transferring computers and other high technology equipment to the People's Republic of China. And finally, during the last visit by President Reagan to China, there was a big to-do about a nuclear accord, which the president brought back, but has never submitted to Congress, and now that Congress only has 20 days left, legislative days left, will never be approved by Congress in 1984. There seems to be a lot of rhetoric, and yet the contradiction in reality. Can you please comment on that, and what the reaction is on the part of the People's Republic of China to all the rhetoric without any substance?
To neutralize that question. Is there a gap between agreements actually reached and rhetorical claims of agreements reached?
We in China is saying, which we, I think we keep on saying to our American friends in your government, that there's much thunder but little rain. And they know it all by heart. They always assure us just have patience, rain will come.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ambassador, I'd like to talk maybe closer to home. I'm wondering if you have targeted ways in which improved economic relations between the two countries can benefit cities like Baltimore, and have you targeted ways in which that can happen? And also, how can facilities and resources here in Baltimore benefit the People's Republic of China?
Are there ways in which improved economic relations with China will help Baltimore in particular? And are there ways in which Baltimore in particular might help China?
I'm sure it is so. And I do believe many things will happen to benefit our two sides. I can tell you that certain Chinese cities very much interested to have close relationship with Baltimore, and they would woo your affection and cooperation. But I cannot give you the identity because I think I should first talk to the mayor and get his reaction before I can tell the public.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Ambassador, in China, the most admired person is the late Premier Zhou Enlai. I understand you were the right-hand man to Mr. Zhou. And I want to know if you can give us a few first-hand information about him. Second of all, I'd like to know what's the greatest valuable lesson you have learned from him.
Well, that's a bit.
Having been fussing with the tape recorder here during that last question, I'll have to beg your indulgence and ask you to repeat it. This gives you an opportunity to practice being concise.
I'm an artist, I'll never be concise. Maybe I speak in Chinese. Excuse me, okay. Mr. Ambassador, I understand that in China, the most admired person is the late Premier Zhou Enlai. And you were the right-hand man to him, I understand. Could you please give us some first-hand information? How was he like? And second of all, I'd like to know what's the most valuable lesson you learned from him?
It's a marvelous question. Apparently, the late Zhou Enlai is the most admired man in current China. The ambassador was a very close associate of Zhou Enlai. Would the ambassador be willing to make some comments upon Mr. Zhou and suggest what perhaps is the most important lesson he learned from him?
Yeah, I certainly would like to say a few words. I think he is indeed the most admired man in China and also in many parts outside China. And I've worked under him for many years. As I'm far from being his right man, but I've been working just as a small nail under him. But I was, of course, very much impressed. And I think what is the quality, his self-dedication. He really dedicated himself for the cause, and he lives true to his principles. He's a man who not only has the principle, but he really lives to the minute to the principle. And he is always kind to everybody he comes across. And he may not agree in his views with somebody, but he always likes to hear different views from the other people. And he likes to learn. And he is so kind to everybody that he may have political foes, but no one speaks bad words about him. I think that's certainly a great credit that few people will have that. Well, I can only tell you in a small part of what I'm feeling. That's all.
Yes, ma'am.
More interested in venture projects in the United States and China, such as if a company wanted to connect with China, would you have to connect it directly with the government or some sub-agency? Are there restrictions on percentage of the company you may own, or the purpose of it, the number of people it can employ? What are Chinese restrictions on American business?
What are Chinese restrictions on Americans seeking to do business in China?
Well, we are now welcoming Americans to come to do business. they can do joint venture, or they can even open up the purely a business entirely of American capital. And they can have their own way of management. Of course, they have to follow the laws that we are now have been worked out, and as the limit are the laws. And I cannot tell you exactly because there are so many laws going on. But so far, I think it's really no quite definite limit for the Americans. There are many fields they can work on, particularly on the large projects. But the main thing is to negotiate. They have to work out a satisfactory arrangement that the Americans would feel be satisfied to work on, and many things that can be negotiated. We have no fixed rule except what has been already been put down in the laws. But even for that, there can be exceptions. That's why we set up special economic zones. That we given the about 5 specific economic zones and 14 ports and cities and other areas with special privilege for the foreign capitals. So really there's a great flexibility in order to invite the foreign businessmen to come to China and work with us.
Unfortunately, we only have time for 3 more questions, Dr. McIntyre. Dr. McIntyre.
I've just returned from China on an opportunity to visit Taiwan and Hong Kong. I must say that the hospitality of the Chinese people is exceptional, enjoyed immeasurably. I had a chance to talk with some of the ministers, and I understand that tourism is a very important part of your future economic plan. Now, if this is the case, I would like you to comment on how you can make tourism more acceptable, make it less difficult. As you probably know, an individual visa is extremely difficult to secure, and if one goes on a tour, it's very expensive. I think the average by tour is $15 a night, a day, for both tours and night. And it seems to me that if this is a part of the economy, and we do want many Americans to see this tremendous hospitality of the Chinese people, what are you doing now to try to facilitate tourism?
What is the People's Republic of China doing now to facilitate tourism to your country, which so many Americans find attractive, warm, and friendly?
Yes, we do realize the importance of tourism. First, it would earn foreign currency, but even more important is to create better understanding and also help to bring up the economic economy at home, as well as offering greater opportunities to work with foreigners or foreign companies. I think we are now, of course, our accommodation is poor, and service sometimes is also poor, and that makes it difficult for tourism, although there are many attractions in China people would like to see. But now we are making great efforts to improve that. We are building new hotels, and many are being built with by foreign enterprises or with joint ventures. There are many large, big hotels being built up in the big cities, and also in some other parts they are also building. And we are buying more cars or vans for traveling. Our air service is trying to improving, also still far from satisfactory, I must say, but they are doing it. Also, we are also trying by other means to improve that, and we realize what the foreign tourists would like to have, and we try to meet their requirements and demands. And we think it would be a good thing if we can make them happy, and we will also make more friends by the tourism. And we would like to we are doing in every way, and we also welcome suggestions and criticism, also participation in improving by foreigners in building up the Chinese tourist industry.
Two more questions. Mr. Berger?
Thank you. Recently, the United States has relied on a bilateral trade agreement in agriculture with China to sell more of its cereals and grains in China. Is the People's Republic of China willing to renew this agreement at the end of the year, or do you think it may fall victim to the dispute on textiles?
I think it, yeah, please.
The ambassador needs a lot of help. As you are the bilateral agreements with respect to various American commodities likely to be renewed at the end of the year?
Yeah. Well, on the grain business, we have bilateral agreement not just with the United States, but also with some other countries like Canada, Australia, and Argentina, or some other countries. And we still need to buy grain, although we are trying, our grain production is increasing, but we still will continue to buy grain both for our own needs as well as maybe for international trade. But this kind of bilateral agreement on grain is not the general practice in the world, and I think China is seriously considering how we will do with the further purchase of grains, with treaty or maybe with some modifications. Certainly, it's not in connection with any retaliation for the American, but because we have to take into consideration of all the other countries too, and I think I would think we would deal on the same with the same measure on this matter. But so far, I have not yet been informed as how we'll go on in the coming years.
Our last question, yes, sir.
With China's civilization being 5,000 years or greater older, and the United States being a very young nation, what one piece of advice could you give to us culturally that we could learn from China?
The question was, given China's long tradition and culture and great age and America's relative youth, what one lesson would you suggest to us?
Well, come to China.